It's Create Day, my friends. I'm hoping to inspire you with some woodland themed mixed media on canvas. Welcome to my channel. Let's get started. My canvas is one that I picked up at the thrift store. It is 11 by 14 inches. The first thing I want to do is prime it with a coat of my white gesso. This step isn't always going to be necessary, but because of the different types of products I'm using today, I wanted to make sure it had a good primer on it. I was inspired for this by this piece of mulberry rice paper that is called Woodland theme. So I am just going to go ahead and tear those edges off so it has a nice organic look to it. And then I can apply that onto my board with some Mod Podge. I'm placing this down off center, and so it's over to the right side. And now I'm just taking my Mod Podge and working in sections, laying that onto my board, and then smoothing the rice paper down into it. And I like to use this little silicone scraper that I have to help smooth out any wrinkles. And then I just keep applying it in sections and then smoothing it out. Now I'm applying the Mod Podge over the entire top of the rice paper, making sure that I get those edges sealed down. I'm going to be doing some raised stencils to add some texture, and so I'm just showing you a bunch of the different ones that I grabbed that I thought I might be able to use. I do not end up using them all. I use 3 of them. And this is the modeling paste I'm going to use for the stencils. This stencil I got off of Amazon, and I will leave a link below in the description box along with all the other items that I use in case you are interested in it. I think it's really pretty, and so I'm using the corner pieces starting up in the corner, and then I'm going to bring that all the way down onto the rice paper. I'm just using one of those cheap little kind of like putty knives that you can get at the craft store. They usually come in a pack with paintbrushes, and they're really inexpensive, but you can use anything that's got a flat surface on it, like a credit card or whatever, that you have handy to you want to smooth that down into the stencil. See how pretty this is? I absolutely love it. Now I'm using the stone stencil. This is another one I got from Amazon. The company is called Craft Treat, and I will leave that link down below as well. And this one, I don't remember what it's called, but it came from Joann's, I believe. And so I'm just going to go ahead and keep applying it in different areas. No rhyme or reason, just whatever I thought looked good. And then I took some of the modeling paste and I am just kind of working it around the sides, just to kind of fill in and make sure that it all looks cohesive. The modeling paste is completely dry now, so I'm taking some fine grit sandpaper and I'm just going to go around and lightly get off any high spots, any little jagged edges or peaks that were sticking up, and just give it a nice smooth finish. Then I'm going to go over it with a coat of my gesso. I may have watered that down a little bit because I showed you the water bottle, but I don't remember if I did or not. But I do know that on the next step I do water it down, so maybe that's the reason I showed you the water bottle. So I just want to give this a good base coat so that it's nice and primed and ready for some of the other paints I'm going to be using. So now this is where I'm watering that down so that I can do a haze over the rice paper with it. So I'm going to brush this watered down gesso on there, and then using a baby wipe, I'm going to remove most of it. I want to just give a little bit of weathering and aging to this, so I just want this kind of white haze over the rice paper. These are some little molds that I made out of resin. I end up making a whole lot more out of air dry clay. But here's the molds I use. This one's from Amazon, and then I use the Toadstool mold from IOD. I also used the acorns from this Horse and Hound mold by IOD. And then I used the dragonfly from their Monarch mold. Now I'm painting my little resin castings with French linen chalk paint. Once these were dry, I added some Dixie Belle grunge glaze to it, and I let it sit on there for quite a while. I didn't wipe it off right away because I want the darkness to still show through when I paint these. Now I'm going to use honeycomb and medium brown to start painting my mushrooms. And what I'm doing is watering down my paint. In fact, all of these castings that I do on this project, I will be doing the same type of procedure where I water the paint down a little bit, I brush it on there, and then I wipe off a little bit of it with the baby wipe. That way I can blend my colors and just give it a more organic look. So now we're moving on to some stamping onto the board. I have Stays on Ink in Timber Brown, and I'm using this number stamp that I got from Micheals, just randomly placing some numbers. And they end up mostly getting covered up with molds anyway, but you know, you don't know which direction things are going all the time. So this next one is just a script stamp. I think that might be an Amazon one. I'm not sure. If it is, I'll put a link below. And I'm again just doing random stamping on here. Now I'm going to mix gray and white for my base coat of the entire area around the rice paper. And I also want to paint up onto those raised stencils that I did. So I can kind of just blend this all in to that rice paper. So that's where I'm using a baby wipe to get any excess. I don't want like solid paint going onto that rice paper. It's time for some Distress Oxide spray. This one is called Rustic Wilderness. I put some into a small cup, and now I'm using my paintbrush to spread it on, and a water bottle, just spritzing the water on there to get it to run. I use my paintbrush to manipulate this and spread it around and keep spritzing it until I get the look that I want. I use my heat tool to get it pretty much dry so that when I turn it the other direction to let it run off on the side, I won't get that original area running back down this direction. Now I'm using one called Speckled Egg. I wanted to add in some of this blue color, but I knew I had to work really fast and use it sparingly because it will reactivate that first color, and I didn't want these two colors to just completely blend together and make a totally different color. So I would do a small section, get it dry, and then move on to another section. I didn't apply this over the entire board, just in certain areas. Once this was dry, I did give it a coat of the Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Sealer. I'm using the last of my DAS air dry clay to make a whole bunch of these little leaves from this little silicone mold. And then I will be able to break into my new package of IOD air dry clay to make these acorns. This is my first time using the IOD's air dry clay, and I really liked it. I felt like it was easy to work with. And for these, since they're already white, I do not paint them. I'm going straight in with that Dixie Belle grunge glaze. I thought it would be fun to add a crackle paste to this, so I grabbed my distressed translucent crackle paste and started spreading it on with my little palette knife. But I soon found out that I had not sealed this as well as I thought I had, and it started to reactivate the Distress Oxide sprays, giving me a completely different color coming through because it does react and changes the color. And it also prevented it from giving me any crackle. So this was a total lose-lose, but I'm going to carry on with the project, and I went ahead and sealed it really well this time before I went in with this Dixie Belle Van Dyke Brown Glaze. And this time I did get it sealed correctly, so I didn't have any problems moving forward with this. I'm brushing it on and then wiping it back with a rag, and then I can use a baby wipe to get it. If the rag's not taking off enough, I can use the baby wipe to wipe back even more. And I just do it till it looks how I want it to. It's up to you how much you want to put on, or you could even skip this step. Not everybody likes the kind of, dark and decrepit looks like I do. So then it was time to start adding some of my old molds. And I started with my gel medium. I've used that in the past for things, and it has worked really well, but they weren't sticking well enough with that. So I switched over to the Aleene's Turbo Tacky Glue, and I was able to get everything glued on with that, and it all held really well. I started with the bottom pieces, and then I did the top piece, and then I worked my way around from that. I just laid out all my little leaves and my acorns in the places that I thought they would look nice. I'm kind of stacking and overlapping them, so it's not just a flat round border. It's completely three-dimensional, which I know it's kind of hard to see here, but when I get this all painted, it will make a lot more sense. So I have all of the pieces glued on now, and the one thing I'm not happy with is this gap right up in here, because to me it just makes it look off-centered. So I have an extra acorn that I had already painted, and I'm just going to go ahead and glue that like right in there, just to kind of even things out a little bit, so it's more like the right distance around in proportion to the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that on before I paint everything, because I'm going to, blend in the painting I do into that acorn so that it all goes together. Starting the paint now, I have Deco Arts Leaf Green on my plate, and I have some water on my plate so that I can mix it together and not just have a solid thick paint. I want to brush this on and be able to dab it off with a baby wipe so that it's a more muted shade of green. And I'm going to be doing other colors as well, so it's not going to look like this when it's done. But see, I just go in and remove a lot of it, and that will help reveal the grunge color that I put down into all those little details. The next color is Spanish Olive, and I'm going to do the same thing, having some water on my plate so that I can just brush this on, not around the entire leaf of every leaf, just in areas to give it some color variation. And all the paints I use on this, I will be using that watered down technique. Next, I'm taking Nutmeg, and with this one, I'm using a very small brush to kind of flow that down into all the little veins on the leaves. The grunge glaze didn't come through as much as I would have liked it to, so I'm just going to try to just draw that over the little vein lines and then dab off the excess with my baby wipe. I'm also using this same color to do the bottom portion of my acorns. The next color I'm using is Villa Green, and I've already done it on one half of this. This is the side that already has it on there, and this is the side that doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up. The next color is Honey Mustard. Next up is Golden Straw, and I'm using these more fall-like colors a little more sparingly. I don't want this to just scream fall. I just want it to, I want to keep it that little woodland look. And the next one I'm going in with is Burnt Sienna. And again, I'm going to use this more sparingly, and I just want lots of variations of color on these. Now I'm going to take my Dixie Belle's Dixie Dirt and add it down around the bottoms of the mushrooms. I felt like they were just kind of naked standing there without any dirt around them. So I'm using Mod Podge because this is like a powder that has to stick to something. So you can use Mod Podge or, even a sealer, like a clear sealer of some kind. And then you just take that powder and brush it into the Mod Podge and then shake off the excess. I'm using Cottage White to do a dry brush over the front of this. And this Cottage White that came in the small container, to me it has kind of a bluish tint to it. It's very faint, but the large jar of Cottage White does not have that blue tint to it, and I don't know why that is, but I chose this one because I liked having that. I thought it would blend better because there is some of that blue in this piece. I just thought it would blend a little better than the bright white. So I am going to just, get a little bit on my brush, wipe off the excess onto a paper towel, and I'm going to go around and put this all over everything. Now I'm going to use some Dixie Mud in the color brown. I did not like how the Dixie Dirt looked good, but it was just way too flat. This needed to be three-dimensional like the rest of my piece. So I'm spreading this on. It's like the consistency of like really thick frosting or kind of like the modeling paste, maybe like joint compound. And it just looked a lot better to me. So I put that on there, let it dry, and then I go back in with the Dixie Dirt again because I did like the color of the Dixie Dirt on there. I'm going to make a paper butterfly. These are really super easy. I have an old book page and I'm putting some just regular glue stick on there. And this is a piece of the rice paper that was in the same pack as the one I used on the middle of my board. And so the colors are similar and it just goes together. So I thought it would be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue a couple of pieces on here. I'm going to cut them out with a butterfly stamp, and I was able to get 4, so I'm going to use 2 for each butterfly. So I'm going to make 1 for this project, and I'll have 2 left for another project. This is the butterfly stamp I have. It's magnetic so that you put your paper on there, and then this little piece goes on top, and it fits into place because of the magnets, and you can move your image around to where you want it. And then you put the top on and punch out your butterfly. So this will have the design on the front, and then the back side will be the book page. These are really easy to make, and I think they're super cute. I'm going to glue two of them together just down that middle section. I'm using Fabri-Tac. You can use whatever glue you'd like. And so I just want it to hold together there in the middle. So I get it lined up and then let it dry. And then I can go around the edges with my Distressed Oxide and Vintage Photo. I have this wire, it's 22 gauge. I got it on clearance at Micheals. I'm going to cut a strip about a foot long, and using my hot glue, I attach that to the back of the butterfly in the center of that wire, so I have fairly equal amount of wire at each end. And now I'm going to wrap up from the bottom and down from the top, and I'm going to go around like that a couple of times until they meet back up at the top, where I can then twist them together to make the little antenna. After I twisted those up a little bit, I go ahead and snip off the ends to the length that I want, and then use my little hemostat to just make a little curly at the end of each antenna. And that's all there is to it. This is a Tim Holtz ephemera. I think they might be called chips. And I'm going to use my Spanish copper rub and buff just to add some age to this by running it around all the edges. This one is also Tim Holtz, and it comes from the ephemera numbers. I'm going to distress this with my Distressed Oxide Vintage Photo. Now for another layer of fun, I'm going to take my gel medium and mix in a little bit of this Pearl X powdered pigment, and this one is Macro Pearl. So it's got a little shimmer to it, but it's not like a colored shimmer, and it's not like that iridescent kind. So it's just a very subtle shimmer, and I'm going to dry brush this over like I did with the cottage white, and you can see how it just gives a subtle little sheen to it. It's super pretty, and I liked it so much I decided to put it over all of my little castings, and even on the rice paper itself in there over the main characters. So I have this dragonfly that was originally a really dark purple. I painted it purple lilac, and now I'm mixing the purple lilac with white and painting that on there, and then dabbing off some of it with the baby wipe so I have both colors showing through. When that's dry, I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat of the Dixie Belle Van Dyke Brown Glaze, brushing that on and wiping it back. Once that was dry, I went ahead and did the dry brushing with the cottage white, just like I did everything else. And then he got a little coating of that Pearl X powdered pigment mixed with the gel medium. To finish him off, I'm just going to define the edges of his wings a little bit with my Spanish copper rub and buff. I also took the Spanish copper rub and buff and just with my finger went around the top edge of my canvas here, just to kind of give some more definition to that edge. We are at the final step here of gluing the little extras on there. I'm putting my Imagine sign on top and then adding in my paper butterfly. I'm using the Turbo Tacky Glue for all of these. I have my dragonfly glued down, and now I'm putting in that last little piece of ephemera. Well, that's going to do it for this fun little adventure. I had a great relaxing time putting this all together. I do like the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope that you'll give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. But most importantly, I hope I've inspired you to go create something. See you next time.